the ability to learn rather than to know something. Right? This stuff is going to change all the time. There's new frameworks, new technologies. If you're curious enough to pick something up, build stuff, learn, that's far more valuable. Yeah, don't chase after salary, like chase after growth.
Building the AI startup.
Yeah.
What will be your consideration?
Keep your eyes on like the customer's problem, and then just keep iterating really, really fast. Every engineering leader has to be in the founder mode. You have to think about what really, really, really matters to the business. Keep your team lean, be hands-on, get inside the details as much as possible.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the CTO Show by TechVibe. I'm Michael. My guest is Ishan Agrawal.
Hi.
Ishan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks so much for putting this together.
Ishan, I know your past from developer to the managing large teams, but if you can give a little bit of your background to our audience.
Yeah, sure. I'll walk you through my story a little bit. So my journey into tech started a little bit serendipitously, like when I was about 8. So my dad used to run a stockbroking firm, and after school I would hang around there. And they used to have a bunch of like 286, 386 terminals, the Intel terminals back in the day. And one of the employees just gave me like a basic programming book and a terminal, and it started with like printing stars on the screen as the triangle that used to be the first sort of introduction to programming. And I was hooked. Right? So from that point, that developed into a hobby where I would even like tutor some classes in my high school with my computer science teacher. And that passion kind of led me to move to Singapore for my computer science degree and my business degree. As part of that, I spent 1 year in the US at Stanford in Silicon Valley, worked at a company called Rocket Fuel, which was the fastest growing company in Silicon Valley that year. And I worked on like some high scale platform infrastructure problems. It was an advertising technology company. And that was my introduction into like, this high octane world of tech startups. And then I moved back to Singapore, worked at this company called Wiki, helped scale the data and platform infrastructure there. And as we scaled the company, we got acquired by Rakuten. And that became one of the biggest Southeast Asia exit back in 2013. After that, I joined funding societies in the early years, went on to become the CTO there. So over the 7 years, I helped build the product, hired the team across Southeast Asia, India, and we, went through this period of explosive growth with the company. And it was a very fulfilling period, as well as a lot of learning, a lot of intense learning. Fulfilling because the company had a very sort of strong impact on millions of people and SMEs across Southeast Asia. So you could see like how the work that you're doing is actually helping people lead better lives, grow their businesses, just do better in life. And, that was an incredible experience. More recently, I decided to get into entrepreneurship, did Y Combinator, working on an AI SaaS company. We recently decided to move on from that, but that gave me a lot of a depth of experience in figuring out how to build AI products as well as an AI SaaS company, especially in the US market. So I mean, long story short, like what I really enjoy is building technology products which are connected to and have an impact on people's lives. Hopefully in a positive way.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing all of this. Ishan, we spoke about the journey as an engineer.
Yeah.
How do you grow as an engineer from the beginning of your path? How do you look?
Yeah, I can reflect on my own journey and perhaps, share like what has been my growth journey and maybe a few pointers from there. I think it's very important to be in a high growth environment, because when you're in a very high growth company, there is no time for politics, right? There's no internal enemy. The enemy is like, figuring out how not to die, how to grow. And then there's a lot of white spaces, right? Because there's so much work to be done and there's never enough people. So there's just so much room to grow, whether you're an engineer or whatever work that you're doing, that as long as you're willing to put up your hand and be like, hey, by the way, I can solve that problem, you will end up growing. So you have to find places which are in high growth mode. And I would say don't settle, like keep looking and find that rocket ship. And then as people say, right, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask what seat, just get on the rocket ship. And I think The other thing is oftentimes, I mean, it's natural, but a lot of people get caught up in like, the salary race of like, hey, this number, that number. And I think to me, that's not the right way to think about things because if you're growing really fast, you're doing more and more, you're taking more and more responsibility. Salary will catch up,
Yeah.
right? Salary will always catch up. If you're not growing, the salary will never catch up. Even if you get to a certain level, it'll correct itself, right? The market always finds a way of, valuing things to what they are. So, yeah, don't chase after salary, like chase after growth.
Growth.
Yeah, I think the third aspect of it is when you're growing, I think the only thing that can really sort of come in your way is you yourself outside the company. So there's an environment that's your ceiling, right? If the environment is growing, you're growing. And then the only other thing that comes in the way is your own head, like your own ego, your insecurities, your fears. So you have to be very, very honest with yourself. And the more of self-aware you are, I think the better you'll be able to grow. And that's the hardest part. I think even harder than finding, the right environment is like having that journey with yourself where you're intellectually honest and are able to grow through your own shortcomings is where the real growth comes from. The final thing I would say there is you have to know that everyone is also just figuring it out. So when I was early in my career, I would often look at other people in almost awe, the seniors, and be like, they seem like they've figured everything out. They know stuff. And the more and more, like, as you grow in your career, when you talk to people and you see, reflect on your own journey, you realize that no one really knows, what is the right thing to do, and everyone's figuring out. So if you go in with that mindset, it really sort of allows you to make mistakes. It allows you to not have that pressure of, I have to be right. And that also contributes to your growth because you make mistakes quickly, you're more curious, you ask questions, and you just grow faster.
I honestly believe that making mistakes is a key to growth.
Yeah.
If you don't make mistakes, you don't do anything. And if
Absolutely.
you do mistakes, you also build something else, which is my favorite culture of trust.
Yes.
If you make mistakes, people around start trust you because you show those mistakes and you are a normal human.
Yes.
You did a bug
Absolutely.
that breaks things.
Yeah. Allowing people to make mistakes is one of the pillars of innovation as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Let's just step for a second outside of the technology world. I know
Yeah.
you love humor and tea.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
So maybe let's start with tea. Tea has been like a long interest of mine. It's something that I've enjoyed a lot. I love brewing a cup of tea, doing my own blends, sharing with friends and family. Um, the act of brewing a tea is very enjoyable with all the flavors and aromas, and the stillness and calmness it brings. Because often when you're in the sort of startup tech ecosystem, you're always sort of chasing a number, a launch. There's things, there's fires that you're putting out, and I think just the daily ritual of brewing a cup of tea and having a cup of tea and sharing that brings a lot of stillness and calmness to life, gives me perspective. So yeah, that's been like a long-term interest. And humor on the other side has been something that has given me a lot of joy and resilience. Um, I think it also gives you perspective in a way that, we don't need to take ourselves too seriously. Like, sometimes we believe that we create these myths around the work that we do and we just start living in those myths and take ourselves and everything around us too seriously. Yeah. So I think humor allows us to break some tension, bond better. Yeah, so humor has also been like a long-term interest.
I believe so. It's open communication, right? So it's easy just to talk. We did talk before we start recording, and
yeah, we had a few laughs and some tea. So
yes, exactly. So I will be asking you several things related to your journey from a developer to a lead, to large teams, and there are multiple aspects to it. One of that interests me is your experience winning hackathons and applying this learning to your work. Does it help with innovation? Does it help at all?
Yeah, hackathons are interesting because the way a hackathon is designed is you essentially take away everything, right? So there is no restrictions. You don't really care about like something being scalable. You don't really care about cybersecurity. So you're just very, very focused on solving a problem for a user and in a very short amount of time. So I think constraints bring about a lot of creativity, and the way a hackathon is designed, it allows you to kind of work in this sort of very sort of constrained environment, and that brings about a lot of creativities. So yeah, I think that definitely is a mindset that you can carry to your work. And when you're building products with all the constraints, like often a question I would ask is, hey, what if there was none of this, right? Like, how would I approach it? Or how would the team approach it? And then that once you sort of start putting or removing constraints or start putting a lot of constraints, then people start thinking differently, and you can think through 10 different ways of solving the same problem. So I think that brings about a lot of creativity.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. From my perspective, I think myself as well, but many of us engineers do have the imposter syndrome. Do I do it right? Can someone evaluate what's the quality of my knowledge? So this also, I believe, helps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's imposter syndrome. And one thing I would add is also you want to do things like really right. Like that's the kind of, when you go to school, university, you're being marked, right? You have to like, write all the tests and, take care of all the security and so on and so forth, which is the right way to do things. But you have to be practical as well in what you're putting out. A lot of things are very experimental. And if you're trying to build the perfect product, you will never put anything out in front of the user. And I think what is most important is learning from your users and iterating. So finding that balance between building the perfect product and putting something out first and learning from it and iterating, and then sort of getting to a point where you reach perfection is probably the balance that everyone needs to achieve.
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch topic to AI, the hottest topic these
The
days.
hardest topic, yes.
With AI rapidly growing, what are the trends that we should stay on? What are the things that we should look for in the near future?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about like software developers,
Of
right?
course.
Yeah, I think it's something that, especially this wave of AI, it's a lot more interesting because it's very accessible, right? So anyone who's a software engineer can quickly wrap around, use the APIs and build a product and like just put it out for the world to use, right? And whenever any one of us has interacted with ChatGPT, Claude, it's a very visceral experience. It's something that you've never experienced before. So I think for a software developer today, what I would recommend is just build stuff, right? Use these APIs, solve a problem that you have, use it in your daily life, use it as a thought partner, use it as a sort of a coding co-pilot, learn things. It's a great teacher. So learn things from it. And yeah, just try to use it in your daily life as much as possible. And focus on building stuff rather than getting a certificate or doing a course. I think you learn way more in actual building of products than, for instance, getting a certificate. And I would go to an extent to say that if I'm hiring someone today, even if I don't need that skill of AI engineer, I would say that it would I would always prefer someone who's played around with this stuff, because what matters more is the ability to learn rather than to know something. Right, this stuff is going to change all the time. There's new frameworks, new technologies. If you're curious enough to pick something up, build stuff, learn, that's far more valuable than, hey, I know like these 5 things and I'm like only going to do these 5 things. So yeah.
Yeah, and I also sense that actually even not engineers, if they can play with those tools, they can communicate with us easier, explain what to build, right? So this is
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the role play is like a very big aspect of this technology. So whether you want to figure out how to talk to your manager about a certain thing, or how to talk to a potential customer, a colleague, I think it's great for that as well. Just to be able to sort of practice that communication, and especially a lot of engineers, a lot more focused on building stuff rather than communication, and that's often a skill that we're not taught in school as well. So this is a tool that you should definitely explore, and this will help you build out that soft skill that is always harder, and then you end up in situations iterating in like real world situations, but here you can like simulate any kind of environment and learn much faster.
Next question is also related to AI. Now, not advising only devs, but in general startups. Building the AI startup.
Yeah.
What will be your consideration? Data infrastructure, severity of the data. What will be the thing that we should think of from your perspective?
Yeah, this space is very interesting, right? Things are changing as we speak. I'm sure like by the time we finish the podcast, there's like 5 more frameworks out there. and models have already gotten better and cheaper. But yeah, I mean, it's, there's certain things, certain patterns that have clearly emerged. So you will start, I think the first thing that you have to start with is what customer problem that you're solving, rather than worrying about like cost, data infrastructure, and all of that. If you are able to build something that has a clear solution to a customer's problem, then you get to the next phase of it, right? Which is like, okay, maybe cost is a problem. Maybe I need to know how to evaluate it, how to monitor it. Yeah, so then you get into those problems. So then you will get into like fine tuning solutions, building your own evaluation framework, maybe taking a more agentic approach to things. And there's open source frameworks available. There's more than enough sort of documentation out there to figure out how to do any of this. Um, yeah, so I think another thing that you have to be prepared for is while there's a lot of frameworks, since this ecosystem is evolving very fast, at least myself, I've often found myself just building stuff from scratch. So be prepared to build a lot of that stuff from scratch rather than relying too much on frameworks, because these frameworks are also not in a fully mature state, and your requirements may be very different. So I think it's just all hands in. Keep your eyes on like the customer's problem, and then just keep iterating really really fast. That's the advice that I can give.
Solve the user problem at
Yeah.
the end. It's always the best
Yeah.
key to everything.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's go back to engineering leadership.
Yeah.
You are one of those that went the whole path. You
Yeah.
started with just as a coder, and
Yeah.
then you did the next steps. What's the learning from this? What's the difference for you as an engineer on this journey? How you
Yeah.
change your approach to technical problems?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. And I think we were talking about it a little bit earlier as well, right? Being an engineer is definitely quite different from like being a leader, or an engineering leader. I think few of the things that I realized over the journey, maybe, I mean, the way I sort of mentally break it down is people, process, and business. So on the people side of things, you have to, you're like doing a lot of stuff yourself. You're coding, you're building websites or APIs and applications or whatnot. And at some point, you realize that you have to start moving away from that and delegate more. You have to kind of practice the art of letting go, and that's not very easy, right? Because you're used to building stuff yourself. So I think that's the first realization when you start moving to more leadership role, that you have to start letting go, start delegating more. You have to be able to work with people. You have to be able to identify the potential in people, and help them grow. Right. I think that's a very strong sign of a good leader. People who can identify the potential in different folks and help them grow. And then you have to lead by example. You have to do things right. Like if you are not writing tests yourself, you're not documenting things yourself, and then you ask the team to do it, they're not going to do it, right? People follow how you do things, and whatever you say doesn't matter. Whatever you do is what people pick up on. So that's the people side of things. I think also when you look less at your coding environment and look more at a P&L of a business on a regular basis, a lot of things become very clear, right? The decisions that you take become very, very different. So we were just talking about, like for instance, as an engineer, I would think a lot more about, whether we should use Golang versus Java. But in
Of course, Golang.
well, but as an engineering leader, you would think about the problem very differently, right? You're thinking about like, hey, what do my customers want? What is the customer problem? What is important for the business? And then this choice, how does that play out in the bigger picture, right? And oftentimes it may not even make a difference, and in other times it may actually have a strong impact on the business. So you're thinking about the problem very, very differently. And the third part is business. Sorry, did I cover? Oh, process, yes.
Process.
The third part is process. So process is essentially codification of behavior at scale, right? So once you go from a team of 5 to 20 to 50 to 100 and so on and so forth, you want certain consistent behavior across the team. And process is just a way of codifying that. When you get into bigger teams, you obviously each team has a certain level of autonomy, but it cannot be like completely chaotic. So you have to start introducing some level of process. And sometimes it can be as simple as a checklist, which goes a long way, like a pre-deployment checklist. or sometimes it could be like fully documented processes, like you're doing your tabletop exercises and your incident reviews and so on and so forth. So I'm generally not for like too much process. I think just enough process is the right balance. Yeah.
And the own company culture, I believe that actually every group of individuals create different culture.
Yeah.
As you said, it starts with the leader, but it applies to everyone, right?
Yeah.
And I love your example with checklist. I love aviation industry,
Yeah.
and the security in aviation is based on checklist.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should apply it.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend using checklist.
There's a very
Simple
good
thing.
book on this called The Checklist Manifesto by this guy,
I
Atul.
missed this one. I will need to read it.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for
nice
sharing.
book,
Another question that it's also appeals to my emotion is how to distribute the team that it's in multiple geographical locations and time zones challenges.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question because of how things are evolving as well. I mean, when COVID hit about 4 years ago, it's been 4 years. When COVID hit, I think most of the world took a bet on like, remote first cultures and distributed teams. And I've been a believer in like, remote first and distributed teams. So I'll talk first about like how at least I've approached it. I think you have to set the culture right to enable a distributed team. So you have, first of all, like the whole team needs to be remote first. You cannot have a satellite location and HQ. That doesn't work, right? You can't have a first class citizen and a second class citizen, right? So everyone needs to be on the same footing. Like if you're joining a meeting, right, you can't have like 10 people in a room and one person dial in and trying to figure out where the camera is and where the mic is. So everyone has to be on the same footing. I think the culture should allow for a certain kind of communication, a lot more documented, asynchronous communication. If there's a lot of hallway conversations happening, again, like you're creating a disadvantage for someone who's remote, and that doesn't work. So you have to set the right culture to be able to enable a distributed team, and then you hire people who are comfortable with that, because it's not everyone's cup of tea. There's people who love coming to the office, working with people. You don't want to put them in a remote setting. They're just not going to be happy, right? So you need to find people who actually genuinely subscribe to a distributed team, remote first culture. And then of course it's also like, how do you divide work, right? So if you have, let's say, more sort of folk like let's say teams in Vietnam and India and Singapore, and these are in-office teams, so you have like some sort of a hub and spoke kind of a model. Then you want to divide work in a way where a lot of the work that people are doing can be in person, and then there is less communication involved with like another team in another location. But my preference is always like either fully distributed or in office. Like I generally am not a big fan of
hybrid.
Yeah, hybrid.
Yeah, I agree. At the same time, I love the office atmosphere, and the whiteboarding session is definitely my thing.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's about setting the culture, right? It's, and then everyone knows the place and how we do things.
Especially in early stages of a company, I think that the energy of being in the same room, having quick conversations, things move way faster. So yeah, I think especially for like early stage small teams, definitely being in the room, there's no way you can beat that versus like being a remote team. So I think there's pros and cons, and everyone has a different approach here.
One more question related to innovation. So on a daily basis, devs are forgetting that we need to foster the culture of innovation. How you will encourage your team to do it, really innovate in our work?
Yeah, I think it comes back to really thinking about the customer. What is innovation, right? You should not think of innovation for innovation's sake per se. Innovation comes about when you're trying to solve a problem within a set of constraints, right? Then you're like, oh, I need to find an innovative or creative way to solve the problem within that set of constraints. So as long as you're thinking about the customer and you're working with a certain set of constraints, I think it can lead to innovation. What often happens is, because we create a process around the development of software, we break down a problem into a sort of a document and tickets, user stories, and so on and so forth. And oftentimes, by the time a developer picks up a problem, they're very far removed from the customer. So I think the question is how can you bring uh, the person sort of building for the customer actually to understand the customer's problem. So that could be like actually being face to face with the customer, get your sales team to take engineers wherever possible to actually meet the customer. And if you're doing a B2C product, then you should be dog fooding on your own products as much as possible. So yeah, I think it's really about always being like very, very customer focused, and then allowing people to have a sense of ownership. Like we were just talking about this Japanese manufacturing culture, right? And I recently read this book called Creativity Inc. by Ed Matmull. And one of the things he mentions in the Japanese manufacturing culture is anyone on the factory floor is allowed to pull the chain to stop the entire production line. I think that's the level of ownership you need to give to individuals, whatever they're doing in the company, right? And especially in an engineering team. If they feel like there's something wrong, they should be able to like stop the whole project and be like, by the way, we can do things better. And if people have that level of ownership, they will feel like empowered enough to solve problems in more creative ways, and you will end up with more and more innovation.
But still, we're coming back to the critical fact that you need to understand the user need, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have it, then you have a way to do the next steps.
Otherwise, you don't even have a business, right?
That's true. One more topic on the engineering leadership. We also spoke about the current market situation. The teams are shrinking.
Yeah.
At the same time, we have AI.
Yeah.
And how to put those things together to keep our teams performant. What's your point?
Yeah, it's a very exciting time where there's a lot of pressure on companies and engineering teams to work with, to produce a lot more with a lot less. And in a way, it's a little bit of a reversion to the mean after the 2021 ZERP era, where money was a lot more freely available. And I think it's healthy, right? Like after you've had a good holiday meal, you need to go back to the gym and work out a little bit. So we are in that phase. And thankfully, things like coding copilots are enabling engineers to be able to move faster and not do the little bit of the boring work or the repetitive work of engineering, but stay more on the creative side of the work. So, I mean, the world that we live in definitely means that, teams need to be leaner, managers need to be more hands-on. In fact, like very recently, there's a Paul Graham essay on, being in the founder mode. That's become popular from a Brian Chesky talk. And I actually was fortunate to attend a Brian Chesky talk where he exactly talked about the same stuff last year in June in Silicon Valley. I think that's the right way to think about it. Every engineering leader has to be in the founder mode. You have to think about what really, really, really matters to the business. Keep your team lean, be hands-on, get inside the details as much as possible. You're not there to just sort of manage people and tell them what to do, or just sort of paint a vision, but you have to get into the details and sit side by side with the team, build stuff wherever you need to build stuff. It'll also help with the innovation aspect, because how do you sort of know what bets to take when you're not very hands-on and you're not building every day? So yeah, I think it's an interesting turn of events, and it's probably for the better. I think companies overall are going to be a lot more leaner in the future. There's going to be smaller companies having bigger impact. So yeah, I think it's definitely in the right direction.
Agree. Thank you very much. You said about the founder mode. Let's talk about the CTO Angels, another project of yours. Tell our audience what it is.
Absolutely. It's kind of, it's funny. So over the last, I would say 5 years, I've been like these two profiles. I've been a CTO, leading a technology organization at fast growing startup funding societies back in Singapore. And then I've been an entrepreneur building developer tools for, the engineering organization or the technology organization. And while I was building dev tools for technology organizations, I was able to go back to my friends who were CTOs at different companies and just, get some feedback really quickly, which probably saved me like, 6 months to a year of that discovery process, because I was able to get very rapid feedback. And then that realization hit, hey, by the way, these folks should like directly talk to each other and innovation will be so much faster, right? And oftentimes it's hard for early stage startup to get, that kind of feedback. And on the other side, when I'm hanging out with my CTO friends, they're always looking at like interesting technologies. We're also figuring out like, hey, what, let's say like authentication software we should they should sort of introduce in their company. There's a lot of options. There's open source, and there's a lot of discussion around that. And some of them are angel investing as well. So I was like, this is something that sounds like should exist in the world. I searched around. There was nothing that existed. I pinged a few people, few VC friends, CTO friends, founder friends. They all seem to be like, hey, yeah, this makes sense. So I just put it together. So we have a small community of CTOs as CDC to public companies. And yeah, we are investing in like early stage companies around the world. It's still very early. It's an experiment that we're trying to figure out whether it makes sense or not. But very excited about it. So far, the response has been great. The CTOs on the group have been like discussing about different projects and different ideas, as well as founders that have reached out to have been sort of very excited to raise money from this group of people. So yeah, it's been fun putting this together.
So if I understand correctly, you focus on the startups that are creating tools for developers, right?
It's actually broader than that. So it could be anything for the engineering organization, from developer tools to networking solutions, cloud solutions, engineering productivity tools, overall productivity tools. So anything that you would wanna, or cybersecurity tools, anything that you would wanna sell into like a CTO org is essentially that what you can raise money for.
Appeals to me. Actually, I should always invest in the things that I understand, right? Not
Exactly. That was the bigger point, right? Like when I'm looking at as an angel investor, when I'm looking at other industries, I'm like, I don't know how to evaluate that, right? I understand fintech, I understand sort of tech SaaS or stuff that I would have bought in the past. But for instance, I don't understand how to run like a fish farm, right? And I won't be able to be a good investor in that kind of a company. So yeah, this was one of the reasons where you invest what you understand in.
Thank you for sharing this. Let's talk about the other side. Being a startup founder, looking for angel investors, what are the critical factors that should be taken into consideration for the startups?
Yeah, I mean, if startups are looking at angel investors, used to be typically it's a few things, right? So either you go with like friends and family, which a lot of people do. So these are people that you worked with, your friend circle who would bet on you. That's usually the first level of round. And after that, you reach out to folks who can like add some value, right? So that could be folks who can potentially introduce you to your customers, who can help you with your technology, your product. So I think it's just, you have to find people who would be your champions and who would be very, very relevant to your business. So those would be, those can be like, execs. In our case, of course, like CTOs is a good parallel to that, but it can be like a CEO. It can be someone who's really, really good at sales, and maybe you want to build a sales organization in the future. So yeah, it's just someone who's very, very relevant to your business.
Thank you. Our audience is looking for the advices for the aspiring CTOs. What will be your advice? How to make an impact as a CTO in the organization?
Yeah, I think it's like, I think we keep coming back to the same thing, right? So obviously you want to build the right technology. You want to take the right sort of technology choices. You want to build the right team. But I think the more important thing is what kind of impact you can create for the business, right? So you have to think really business first and customer first. And that will enable you to, be able to create an impact, a very, very, very direct impact on the business. So everything that you're working on, ask a question why you are doing it, and how does that change my customer's life? How does that create a positive impact on the business that I'm in? And if you have a clear answer, then you should do it. If you don't have a clear answer, then you should really sort of, go and talk to your founder, your manager, whoever the relevant person is, that why am I working on something which I'm not able to answer? How does that relate to my customer or my business? As long as you can do that at whatever work you're doing, I think you will be contributing very, very strongly to your customer and the business.
Thank you. Last question, which actually is, do you have a quote that inspires you on the leadership journey?
Yeah, actually, there's something interesting that the ex-captain of Indian cricket team said, which is again about people. So it's about what he said is you have to be able to see the potential in people when they don't see the potential in themselves. Right? That's the sign of a great leader. And interestingly, Brian Chesky said the same thing in the talk that I was in last year in different words. And these are very two different contexts, right? So there's a captain of a high performance sports team and the CEO of a high performance public company. So that's something that really stayed with me. And that's something that I've also tried to do over my career is, find the potential in people that oftentimes they haven't seen and be able to, help them grow and sort of really nurture that potential to something even more interesting.
Yeah, and they do the stuff for you. Yeah, that's the payback. Thank you very much. We are close to the last section, which is the series of questions that we ask all our guests.
Yes.
And let's start with a simple one.
Yeah.
What's your favorite tech tool that makes your life easier?
Right now, definitely ChatGPT. It's like my pal in my everyday life. I ask it a lot of questions. I learn. I grow through it. So definitely ChatGPT.
I'm super happy that you said it. Actually, I've heard several times that someone's, oh, I'm using ChatGPT, like being ashamed. Why?
Oh, no, absolutely.
It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
We should use it.
Absolutely. Like use it all the time.
Okay, next question is about your professional journey. If you will be not pursuing your current path, if you move back to the times of studies, what will be other path that you can?
I often joke with my wife that I'll probably be a tea master, even though I didn't study it professionally.
Yeah.
But I'll probably be a tea master, if not a programmer.
Thank you. And the last three are more philosophical in general.
Yeah.
So, what are you most grateful for in general in life?
One has to be family, right? I think number one has to be family. Just the incredible support of parents, my wife, my brother, the larger family has just been incredible in enabling. And I think the second thing has to be a good education. I think that's been like a turning point for me and so many people I know, where you just access to good education and good teachers, great teachers have pretty much changed the course of my life and so many others. So very, very grateful for these two.
Thank you. Now let's talk about the best advice you ever received.
General best advice.
Yeah.
I think before I was going on my entrepreneurship journey, one of the very good advice that I received, which I think translates to doing startups, but also generally life, is from the co-founder of Funding Societies, Renault. He said that startup is all just about decisions, right? It's nothing else. It's just the decisions that you make on a daily basis is what will, contribute to the success or the failure. And I took that as more like larger life advice as well. Like it's really just like you are the decisions that you make. That's probably the best advice that I got.
And the last question is the opposite, the worst advice.
Actually, the worst advice that I got, funnily enough, I wouldn't mention the name of the person, but like a sort of a senior technology person, very, very early in my career, who was like, I was about to graduate, and he was like, your job as your goal should be to make sure your boss is happy. I was very young and impressionable, but I remember thinking even then, I'm like, something seems wrong about this advice. Like I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in a place where I have to do work to make my boss happy. And that's not the right way to think about things.
Definitely not. So this wraps up our interview.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming to us, sharing your perspectives. And we encourage our audience to follow Ishan on all the social media channels and follow us, of course.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Michael, for the interview. And I love the chat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.